Hello, welcome back to my Ben 10 review series. I don't really know what to call it, so I guess that's gonna be the placeholder name, where I review every season of Ben 10 in the Ben 10 franchise, except for the reboot series, because everyone else hates it, and I'm just gonna kind of fall into the mob mentality and follow suit. But today I'm gonna be reviewing the second season of Ben 10 Classic. The second season of Ben 10 Classic is the perfect continuation of the first season of Ben 10. It brings back characters from the first season, introduces new mechanics to the world of Ben 10, and is honestly just better than the first season. It picks up where the first season left off and continues the same streak of quality. So today I'm going to be rambling my heart out over the second season of Ben 10, both the positives and the negatives. I'd also like to hear your thoughts of this season down below in the comment section and which one you prefer between season 1 and season 2. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the video. To start off this review, let's talk about the main story of the second season. This season starts off with the episode Truth, which is a great continuation of the season finale of season 1. It reveals more truths about the plumbers, which were totally mysterious in the first season, and it also reveals more lore about Vilgax and his beef with Grandpa Max. This episode also introduces the character Phil, who will be very important in future arcs, especially in Ben 10 Omniverse. And his character is pretty okay in this episode, you know, nothing to write home about, but pretty interesting character nonetheless. I also really just love how they left him stranded in the null void. No food, no water, no helpful things to help him survive. Like, what he did was not okay. Like, he did some pretty bad things in the episode, but like, the punishment he got did not fit the crime that he committed, okay? It's just funny how they just left him in the null void just to suffer, and you will definitely see his suffering in future arcs in Ben 10 Omniverse. But this episode is also important for the main story because it introduces the concept of the null void, which we don't actually get to see in this episode, unfortunately, but we do get to see it soon enough in the season finale. The next episode is the episode The Big Tick, which is kind of a boring episode, not gonna lie, but it does get redeemed by the fact that it introduces the GOAT, Cannonbolt, into the series, and it also breaks the rule that was established in season 1 of only having 10 transformations in the Omnitrix. It also shows that Cannonbolt is canonically stronger than every single one of Ben's other 10 aliens from the first season, which does track, because Ben does use Cannonbolt to beat the holy guoly guacamole out of Kevin Levin in the episode Grudge match. It also paves the way for more transformations to be introduced in Ben 10 by breaking the rule that Ben only has 10 aliens, which in my personal opinion, they should not have done until season 3. I think they should have kept the only 10 aliens approach until season 3 and basically put all the new transformations in season 3 and just basically keep 10 transformations for the first 26 episodes of the series or the first 2 seasons of the show. But what about Ghost Freak? He broke out of the Omnitrix in the tail end of season 2, so Ben would only have 9 aliens, breaking the 10 alien rule. If you have that opinion, then you're right, it would break the 10 alien rule even without any new alien transformations because it would take Ghost Freak out of the equation and turn leaving Ben with only 9 aliens for the last episode of season 2. But my counterpoint to that is that the episode Ghostfreaked Out should have been put in season 3 rather than season 2. I'll explain that when I talk about the episode Ghostfreaked Out, but back to the previous thing I was talking about before we got on a side tangent. I believe they should have kept Ben only having 10 aliens till season 3. They should have broken that rule in season 3, mostly because the main premise of the show is a 10-year-old kid having 10 aliens. Not him having 11 or 12 aliens or any other number. It's strictly a 10-year-old kid having a watch that turns him into 10 aliens, and that's it. They should have kept the original 10 aliens for the first 2 seasons. They should have then moved the introduction to Cannonbolt and Wildvine from season 2 to season 3 and the exit of Ghost Freak at the tail end of season 2 to season 3 too, so they don't break the own premise of their show in the first 15 episodes. This is one positive I do have for the reboot series, is that it makes sure that Ben only has 10 aliens no matter the circumstances. They'll switch out aliens to remain the 10 alien only rule. That is me basically going 100% on my memory, so I could be wrong about that, especially like I think in the movie where the reboot, but you get the main idea of what I'm trying to get across. Ben should only have 10 aliens at a time, at least for the first 2 seasons of the show. It also makes more sense for Ben to first get the ability to scan other aliens and gain them as transformations like he did in season 3 first, and then get the ability to get more transformations like he did in season 2. It doesn't make sense that Ben got 2 brand new transformations in the Omnitrix before he got the ability to get new transformations in the Omnitrix. Ben should not have gained or lost any transformations before season 3. Then at the beginning of season 3, he loses Ghost Freak, making him only have 9 aliens, and then in the following episodes, he'll gain the ability to scan other aliens to gain them as transformations, and then he'll get new transformations in the form of Cannonbolt, Wildvine, Ben Mummy, Ben Wolf, and Frankenstrike. That's my opinion, and that's all I'll say on the topic. I think for the first 2 seasons, Ben should have stuck to only the original 10 and not broken from that rule, and he shouldn't have lost or gained any aliens, and that should have all been pushed to season 3 instead of season 2. Everyone else has their own opinion, and you would have to change the story around a lot to fit this only having 10 aliens for the first 2 seasons, but I personally personally think they should have stuck to the main premise of the show for the first 2 seasons, instead of breaking the rule like in the second episode of season 2. Now with that rant aside, moving on to the next episode of this season, which is the episode Framed. This is a pretty good episode. It reintroduces Kevin into the world of Ben 10 and makes good use of his pre-established character from season 1, his ability to transform into Ben's other aliens at will, but not being able to stay human for a long period of time is another great inverse of Ben's character and power set. Him then transforming into his mutated form was pretty awesome and a great climax for this episode. Kevin also will return 2 more times in this season, and this will be set up for a season-long run as the main antagonist. In my opinion, at least, he's the main antagonist of season 2. I will also say that Lieutenant Silver and his whole group of like alien hunters or whatever they were wasted potential in Ben 10. They definitely could have been used better than they were in the rest of the franchise. I also dislike how Gwen legit thought Ben would go out of his way to commit mass amounts of property damage and try to kill innocent people for like no reason. She thought that Ben would just crash out for like no reason whatsoever. Like, Ben does commit property damage, and he does it a lot, and he still does it in the future episodes in season 4, but he wouldn't go out of his way to kill like innocent people. Like, no matter the circumstances, he would not try to kill innocent people. But besides that, it's a pretty good episode in addition to the story. The next episode in the season is the episode Gwen 10, which is a parallel or different universe and timeline, whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't contribute to the season's like overall story because it's set in another timeline, universe, etc. It's a pretty decent episode and does introduce the concept of alternate timelines, dimensions, universe, and etc. to Ben 10, but this episode is far too short to properly execute the premise of the episode in a really fantastic way. This episode definitely should have been a 2-parter to fully cover the main events of season 1 like it tried to do in the episode, and it should have given proper conclusion to the Ben that we follow in this episode. Like, a random Ben from another universe or timeline or whatever gets trapped in this timeline, and then he doesn't get a satisfying conclusion by going back to his timeline or getting back the Omnitrix in this timeline where Gwen gets it. Overall, it's a decent episode, but it's nothing to write home about. I'd probably give like a 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10. It's pretty good, but not like amazing, and it doesn't contribute to like the season overall, so yeah, it's fine, but nothing great. The next episode we're going to be talking about is the episode Grudge Match, which brings Kevin back from the episode Framed, and this episode is basically perfect. First of all, it continues Kevin's story from earlier in this season, and also makes it so that Kevin's character is written out of the season's main story by the end of this episode. This was a great writing choice because if Kevin was able to return and attack Ben again and again in this season, it would just litter the whole season with Kevin trying to kill Ben if he had the chance to. So the choice to write him out of the season at the end of the episode was pretty nice. Also, Ben and Kevin being the only main characters in this episode is also a really great choice too, because we get to see different sides of these characters. Like, Kevin is bloodthirsty and mentally insane and acts way more immature than Ben does, and because of this, Ben's character shifts to him being more responsible and mature in this episode. And this is really good because Ben's not only mature, but his maturity feels within character for Ben. It feels like the same Ben we've come to know, but he's put in a different situation with different people, and that changes the way he acts while still staying in his predetermined character range. It's good writing that Ben does not get a majority of the time, so it's really nice to see in this episode. The battleship they get stuck on is also pretty cool and has a lot of diverse and interesting character designs, but Kevin staying on the ship at the end of the episode and the ship flying off with Kevin in it is also very important for the season in general because it's the gateway into the season finale with Kevin and Vilgax teaming up. Also, this episode has a really great final fight between Kevin and Ben at the climax of the episode. Ben earlier in the episode taught Kevin how to efficiently use his powers, and now that's coming back to bite him because Kevin is going to kill him with his newfound mastery of his powers. But Ben uses Cannonbolt to defeat Kevin and leave the ship, and I love this scene because you need previous context from all the other episodes relating to Kevin in the episode Big Tick to understand why it's just so cool and well put together. This is because when they first met in season 1, Ben only had 10 aliens, and when Kevin absorbed the Omnitrix, he got the 10 aliens DNA, and when they met again in the episode Framed, Ben now had 11 aliens because he gained Cannonbolt as a transformation, but he never used Cannonbolt against Kevin or in front of him, so Kevin's under the belief that he still only has 10 aliens. It's also established in the episode The Big Tick that Cannonbolt is canonically stronger than all of Ben's other aliens. So Ben uses his new transformation that Kevin doesn't know about and that is stronger than all his other aliens to defeat him, and this is a really perfect conclusion to this episode. It's pretty simple writing, but it goes to show how continuity heavy Ben 10 is and uses the information the audience knows and the information Kevin doesn't know to make a beautiful scene that is satisfying when you think about the context behind it. This still doesn't change my previous opinion on Cannonbolt's introduction being pushed back to season 3. I still believe his introduction should be pushed back to season 3, but I still like this scene for what it is. Overall, I love this episode, and this episode makes me like Kevin even more. Unfortunately, he does not appear again until the season finale, so we'll have to wait again to talk about my boy Kevin flippin' Levin. But on to the next episode. The next episode is the episode The Galactic Enforcers, which is a fine episode. It doesn't really tie into anything relating to the season's main story or anything, and the Galactic Enforcers only appear again in the classic series in the episode Ben 10,000, and if you watch that episode without knowing the Galactic Enforcers or seeing this episode, you'd probably just think they're like a random superhero team from the future that Ben knows. So this episode is okay, but the Galactic Enforcers don't make any notable appearances again in the franchise to warrant talking about them in detail. So on to the next episode, and screw you Galactic Enforcers, especially the Tetraman one. The next episode is the episode Camp Fear, which is only notable for introducing the alien Wildvine. But I still have the same complaints about introducing new aliens as I did for the Cannonbolt in the episode Big Tick, so I'm not going to talk about that again because it's just beating a dead horse. I already went on a rant about this. But this episode does have some of the most annoying side casts with those two little kids that just keep bickering the whole episode. It's just really annoying. So let's just move on with the season story. The next episode is the episode The Ultimate Weapon, which is really only noticeable for introducing Grandpa Max's plumber suit, which Gwen will use in the season finale this season, season 2.
This is editor me here. I just realized that this is not the same suit. I was looking at them and I was like, wait, these aren't the same suit. And I was just under the belief, and I was so certain. I thought I was like 100% right that these were the same suit, and that was introduced in this episode to set up Gwen using it in the season finale. But they're two completely different suits. They look completely different. And I just realized that while editing and using the clips for this video, and I was just like, no, because I was so insistent that this episode introduced this plumber suit. Well, it had its own plot, but it also introduced the plumber suit to show Grandpa Max has it. So when Gwen used it in the season finale, it will like make sense. Okay, like be a little, continuity callback, but it wasn't. And now I feel stupid. And for the rest of this video, I keep saying that they set up her using the plumber suit in this episode, but they don't, because this is not the same plumber suit. And I feel like an idiot. And for the rest of this video, I'm going to be under the same assumption that this was the episode that set up him having a plumber suit for Gwen to use it in the season finale, which is not true. So excuse my dumbness, and just continue with the video.
It also reintroduces the Forever Knights, which are characters were introduced in season 1. In this episode, Grandpa Max is really out of character for the sake of the story, but it's just a little too much for me. It makes it unbelievable that Grandpa Max would act this way. I also don't care about this episode, so on to the next one. Yeah, that's right, I'm gonna skip this episode. Screw the Ultimate Weapon. Screw this episode. The next episode is the episode Tough Luck, which brings back the villain Hex, who was set up in season 1. We also get introduced to his niece Charmcaster, who's a pretty good villain and will be very important for future series down the road. Have nothing really to talk about regarding this episode specifically. I do wish that this episode was the episode where Gwen got introduced to having magic powers. This is because I think Gwen gets powers too late in the show to really make it memorable to her character. This is maybe just a me thing, but like when I grew up, I think I maybe missed some episodes in season 3, so I missed where she got Charmcaster's spell book and gained magical powers. So I was kind of confused where she had magic like in late season 4. So I just don't think magic is really memorable to her because she only gets it early season 3, but she only really starts using it late season 3 and season 4. She should have studied magic at the end of this season, then use magic at a consistently increasing level for the next 2 seasons. So half the show she's powerless, and the other half she does have powers, compared to her really only using magic constantly late season 3. But I really got nothing else to say regarding this episode. I guess like the only thing I can add to this is that it was really hard to record this. I had to retake this multiple times. I just kept stuttering on my words. But let's move on to the next episode. Yay! I just realized that this has become me talking about every episode, which is something I really didn't want to do in my season 1 review video, and I really tried to avoid doing that. But in this video, I'm talking about each episode to talk about the season's grander story, which is threaded throughout the season. So comment down below, which one do you like better? You like me basically talking about each episode, going through each episode individually and talking about that? Or do you prefer me talking about the season more loosely, where I don't really talk about each episode, but just talk about the season in general? I like both approaches. The talking about the season more loosely leads to shorter videos like the season 1 video, but talking about each episode, you get more in-depth thoughts about the episode and more of my personal opinions. So I could do either one, but yeah, comment down below which one you prefer. Do you prefer this style of video where I talk about every episode in slight detail, or do you prefer me talking about the story very loosely, not going into specifics about each episode? Anyways, let's get back to the review. I'm gonna take a bite of my sandwich now. It's a peanut butter jelly sandwich. It's like 12 o'clock and I'm recording this. I was really hungry. I want a peanut butter jelly. Okay, let's go on to the next episode now. The next episode is the episode They Lurk Below, which is the worst episode of this season because it contributes literally nothing to the franchise overall. The only notable thing about this episode is that I thought the grandkid of the rich guy in this episode was Billy Billions, and that they brought back that random rich kid from this episode for Omniverse and made him Billy Billions. But he wasn't Billy Billions. He was just a random rich kid who was named Edwin. Who has the name Edwin? If you have the name Edwin, I'm sorry, but it's kind of a loser name. With the same haircut and color scheme of Billy Billion. This kid has the same haircut and color scheme of Billy Billion. I was so confused when I learned they weren't the same character because they both look the same and they're both rich. I guess I thought this because I didn't know the name of Edwin, but when I rewatched this episode and heard his name, my dreams were crushed of him being Billy Billion. My perception of reality was warped, crushed, and I felt like I was living in the Matrix. But besides that, I don't care about this episode whatsoever, because Edwin and his grandpa, like, I don't think ever appear again or are mentioned again. I always find it weird when Ben 10 introduces characters and does nothing with them down the road, but then they'll bring back these really minuscule, unimportant characters like Omniverse does all the time. They'll just bring back random characters like for no reason, but they won't bring back other characters. It's just really weird. But yeah, this episode does nothing for the main plot and is kind of mid, so let's move on to the next one. The next episode we're going to be talking about is the episode Ghostfreaked Out, which, if you remember from earlier on in this video, I said that this episode should take place at the beginning of season 3. I will now explain why I believe this. First of all, this episode is the setup for the entire Ghost Freak arc or storyline in season 3. They get all the satellite stuff and they revive Saskir for his plan. All the episodes that do that are located in season 3 except for the episode Ghostfreaked Out. The only episode that contains this arc and is not presented in season 3 is this episode. I find this extremely odd because why make one of the most streamlined storylines or arc in the series so far, but only have one episode not be in the season where every other episode is in that said season? I find it weird because if they just removed this episode and placed it at the beginning of season 3, I don't think that would change much, and in fact the story of the Ghost Freak arc would all be contained in season 3, so it could just be a season storyline like season 1. So I used all my brain power and I was thinking, why was this episode in season 2 and not in season 3? This is my conspiracy theory, okay? And some could say, this is my film theory. My theory is that the writers already wanted to do the Ghost Freak storyline, because I think like they said they wanted to do it or planned for something like this, and they knew they wanted to do this storyline, but they also knew about the season finale Back with a Vengeance, which would have Ben use Master Control. So what if the writers were thinking that they didn't want to include Ghost Freak as a transformation for Ben when he had Master Control because he'd be too overpowered? He'd have the ability to go invisible, intangible, be able to possess people, and be able to fly, and also like face his hand through people's heads like he did with that one circus freak, which are all crazy abilities Ben could have used that would have made it virtually impossible for Vilgax and Kevin to hit him or even just like take him down. In the season finale for season 1, Ben was easily able to get away from Vilgax with Ghost Freak's powers, so if Ben could willingly use Ghost Freak's powers against Kevin and Vilgax, they'd be cooked. So the writers thought of this, and they put the introductory episode for the Ghost Freak arc where he breaks out of the Omnitrix before the season finale, so they could write out Ghost Freak's power set for the season finale so Ben wouldn't be too overpowered. This would have made the season finale way more believable and easier to write compared to having to write it with Ghost Freak as a transformation in mind. So they put a season 3 episode before the season 2 finale to make the season 2 finale easier to write overall. But remember, that's just a theory. A film theory. I plagiarized them. Please don't come after me. Don't copyright strike me. But I did just make that up on the fly without any evidence or like research whatsoever. So it's not really like a theory. It's just me just saying random BS. But I like to believe this is true. So I'm going to believe it's true. So I'm going to put that episode in the season 3 review rather than put it in this one because it's so pivotal to that season's main story. And you just need the context of what happens in that episode to understand the season's main story. So basically, with all that rambling aside, let's move on to the next episode because we will not be talking about the episode Ghostfreaked Out in this season review. Yay! The next episode in season 2 is the episode Dr. Animo and the Mutant Ray, which introduces fusions to the Ben 10 franchise, which the fandom totally ate up. I do find this episode funny because it portrays fusions in such a negative light compared to later on in the franchise, where fusions are more positively seen, especially with Ben 10,000 and Omniverse. But if you want to watch a full 10-minute plus video on this episode, go watch this video where I talk about each fusion and I redraw them in my art style. But finish this video first so my retention doesn't get really bad. Please, I'm begging you. It took me a long time to make this. I've been sitting for over an hour recording this audio. Anyways, onto the season finale and wrap up for this season's story, which is the episode Back with a Vengeance. Dun dun dun! The episode Back with a Vengeance is the season finale to season 2 and concludes and brings together a lot of the season's storylines. In this episode, Vilgax and Kevin both join forces to defeat Ben Tennyson, who just gained the ability Master Control that lets him transform into any alien mentally without any time restraints. This episode is absolutely peak fiction in cinema, and I think this is the best episode in Ben 10 Classic and maybe the best episode in Ben 10 just generally. It has really good animation situation, and the standout moment is when Ben absolutely dog walks Vilgax and Kevin. This episode also shows the Null Void for the first time in all its glory. We got to see the Null Void projector and the Null Void creatures in the season 2 premiere, but not the Null Void itself. This episode also writes both Kevin and Vilgax out of the show, but Vilgax will return in the movie Secrets of the Omnitrix, which I am making a video about eventually when I get there, and Kevin 11 makes a brief appearance in the episode The Perfect Day, but it's not really him, and they both do feature in future episodes in the classic series. The two of them combined is a deadly duo, but in my opinion, we don't get enough interactions between the two of them. It would be way more interesting to see them interact more, which would be more possible if this episode was a two-parter, which I believe this episode should have been to give more proper time for everything that happened in this episode, but this episode is still peak fiction in cinema, even with the fast pacing. Fast pacing does not equal bad pacing. Some things are just faster paced than other things, and I think this episode just has a very fast pace to it, but it's still a good pace for this episode. We also get to see the plumber suit.
If I see one comment in the comment section talking about this stupid plumber suit misconception, I swear I'm going to crash out. I swear I'm going to crash out.
From the episode The Ultimate Weapon come back, as Gwen uses it to go to the Null Void to save Ben. Master Control is also another amazing part of this episode. It's such a cool and interesting idea that will come back down the road in future series. Then finally, the end of this episode is so amazing with Gwen, Ben, and Max all having this impactful emotional moment, and it shows one of the most iconic moments of the show with Ben regaining the Omnitrix. This episode is so good. I love how it ties together aspects from other episodes like the Null Void in the episode Truth, Kevin's storyline throughout season 1 and 2, bringing back Vilgax from the season 1 finale, and how it introduces one of the most important features in Ben 10 being the Master Control. This episode is beautiful and a perfect end to this season's story. Overall, this season's story is really good and just basically fantastic. It doesn't have a main overarching story the same way season 1 did with Vilgax. Instead, this season kind of goes more with the flow, creating more surprises and plot twists. The only downside being that it isn't really built up to or have any foreshadowing to it, but this is Ben 10 where things just kind of happen compared to a show with an overarching goal and like setup and foreshadowing like Avatar, where Aang has to master the 4 elements and defeat Fire Lord Ozai. But that's just the type of show Ben 10 is. It's just a new villain every arc with no real end goal or mission to complete, but Ben 10 embraces that and makes the most out of the freedom of not being a show with like an overarching plot that was planned out from the beginning. Season 2 masterfully utilizes the type of show Ben 10 is and makes a really nice story out of the one-off episodes. I also want to compare this season to the first season because like, why not? This season is slightly worse off than season 1's in terms of quality episode to episode. I think there are more mid episodes in season 2 compared to season 1, but the peaks of season 2 are way higher than the peaks of season 1 in my opinion, maybe except for the season 1 finale, but that's like an exception. This makes season 2 better for me because the peaks of that season are really good and the low parts of that season are only slightly worse than the worst of season 1. Overall, I really like this season's story. It utilizes the characters from previous seasons very well, ties together a lot of mini storylines together in the finale, and has some of the best episodes in the franchise in this season. I think this season perfectly continues the story of season 1 in a very satisfying way that makes it better than the previous season. But that was only the story part of this episode. We're still gonna talk about the characters and animation. Let's go. I'm gonna go mentally insane. Now onto the characters of season 2. The main trio, Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max, haven't changed much and are more static characters. There's no really big development in their characters in this season. There was one episode where one of the main trio acted very out of character, and that was the episode The Ultimate Weapon. In this episode, Grandpa Max acts really out of character, which is the intention of the episode, but I think he acts so much out of character that's just too unbelievable. Grandpa Max didn't have much care for both Gwen and Ben's safety in this episode because they were going after this ancient sword like from the Maya culture or something, but it crosses a line of being unbelievable because he acts so far from his original character and so far from his consistent personality. That's the only gripe I have with the main cast, but I think the side cast of season 2 is way more interesting than the side cast of season 1, so let's talk about them. The first very new notable character in season 2 is Phil. I like him. He's a gateway into learning more about the plumbers and their past. He's also a nice reflection of what Ben could become if Ben continues to be more vain and looking for approval and rewards for his heroism, which was displayed in previous episodes. Phil will come back and play a major role in Omniverse, but his character is just so different in that show compared to Classic. I think that's the point to highlight how much he's changed from being in the Null Void since Classic, but it's still very much a drastic change to his character, and they do kind of feel like different characters. The Galactic Enforcers in their debut episode are very interesting characters. Ultimos is basically just a Superman ripoff like Homelander and Omni-Man, but he's really strict with his rules like that one guy from the Fairly Odd Parents. Then Tina is a female Tetraman, which is really cool because it's one of the alien races in the Omnitrix. I love to see representation of different aliens in the Omnitrix via other characters like Tiny. How'd I get this wrong? I'm so stupid. She did hit on Ben while he was in his forearms transformation, and it's pretty clear in the classic series that Ben is the same age as his aliens. If Ben's 30, his alien would also be 30 years old. So Tiny was hitting on a 10-year-old Tetramant, but maybe their culture is different, but that is kind of weird. And then there's another one, and he's like a floating brain guy. But I don't care about him, and I'm not gonna memorize his name. I'm not gonna look it up either, because I don't care. We also get to see the return of Hex and the introduction of Charmcaster. There's not much to say because they're like only in one episode, and I'll just talk about Charmcaster in another season review, where she plays a larger part in that said season. We also get to see the return of characters like Dr. Animo, 66, and Vilgax. But these returns add nothing new to their characters. It's just nice to see these characters back on the screen. Now time to talk about the main antagonist of this season, being Kevin Flippin' Levin. Last season, Vilgax was the main overarching antagonist, but this season has Kevin Flippin' Levin. I believe that Kevin Levin is the superior antagonist compared to Vilgax. First of all, Kevin Levin has more of an emotional connection to Ben that makes their dynamic way more interesting to watch compared to Vilgax and Ben's dynamic. The connection between Vilgax and Ben is not based on anything the other did to each other, but instead it's really just Vilgax beefing with a 10-year-old kid over a watch, which deprives the emotional stake you have in their conflict because Vilgax is only after the Omnitrix and has no real problem with Ben. He does start to have a problem with Ben, and that does form a more interesting and compelling dynamic down the road, but in the classic series, and especially season 1, there's no really connection between the two and why they're fighting. It's just like, I want the Omnitrix, give it to me, Ben, and Ben's like, no, screw you, Vilgax, I'm not giving you the Omnitrix, and then they fight. But the inherent connection Kevin has to Ben is a more emotional conflict due to the personal buildup the two have in the episode Kevin Levin from season 1. And because you have this personal history, the emotional conflict is way better between the two, and this makes their dynamic way more interesting to watch because of that. Also, Kevin Levin is a mirror of Ben, and that includes his abilities, and it makes for more interesting fights with his abilities that Kevin has, and how they interact with Ben's powers compared to Vilgax's power set, where it's really just him punching things. It's way more interesting to watch Kevin with his abilities fight Ben with his abilities compared to Vilgax fighting Ben, because it's just Vilgax punching really hard. And again, due to the lack of any real connection to Ben, Vilgax's motives come down to him being evil and wanting the Omnitrix, compared to Kevin, where he blames Ben for him being the way he is, like this big mutated freak, and this thinking causes Kevin to blame everything that happened to him on Ben. Due to this, Kevin has a way better motive, which makes him more interesting villain to Ben compared to Vilgax. They also pull off Kevin's writing fantastically, making him just so much better than Vilgax in terms of just being a villain, in my personal opinion. Of course, you could probably prefer Vilgax, I just think Kevin is a better antagonist overall for Ben being the main character. Then finally, every other side character in this season, and I don't care about them, so I'm not going to talk about them. Yeah, just we're gonna forget they exist because I don't like them. And this is my video. But overall, the characters and side characters in the season are very well crafted together, making a more enjoyable experience. This season also benefits from having a better antagonist compared to the last season, making for better episodes like Framed, Grudge Match, and Back with a Vengeance. The characters in the season are the perfect continuation of their previous selves in the first season, and every character introduced into the season is a perfect addition to the world that was already created in season 1 and built upon in season 2. Now, finally, we're going to be talking about the animation of this season. Honestly, the animation is more average compared to season 1. I think season 1 had superior moments in animation that made me jump out of my seat, but season 2 has more kind of average animation overall. I think the animation is more consistent than season 1, but it is more average compared to season 1, where I think season 1 had better animation per episode. Overall, season 2 is just more consistent, but overall the animation is fine. It's more consistent animation, and the characters are on model more compared to season 1. There's no standout moments of animation like season 1 though, so it's good. Nothing to write home about, but it's pretty fine. It's okay. It's average. It's average, which is still really good. It's better than most kid animation. This season is the perfect continuation of the previous season via its returning characters that capitalize on the open ending for the characters from the previous season. It's a natural expansion on the pre-established world of Ben 10 from the previous season. It increases the characters being on model and the overall animation that makes it more overall appealing to watch. Then finally, the season story and interconnectivity blew the previous seasons out of the water. This season is truly a perfect expansion on the original 13 episodes of Ben 10, and these two seasons, or 26 episode stretch, can be considered some of the best Ben 10 content we've ever seen. So if you can please smash the like button, share this video, subscribe, and comment down below your favorite episode from season 2. All of those things would be very much appreciated by me and my editor, which is also me. This video was going to be a 2.5 page script like the season 1 review video, but this video turned into like a 7 or 8+ page script. I just kept writing and writing and just kept I just kept going, and it got this long, and I've been sitting for almost like 2 hours recording this script. But I guess it's a good comeback video after me taking a month hiatus. But with that, I have basically nothing more to say. Have a fantastic day, only if you subscribed and did all the other stuff I said. But if you didn't, then screw you, have a horrible day. Just kidding. Have an amazing day. Anyways, have a good day. Bye!